Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, we're going to talk about our banknotes because the Bank of England have decided that they want to change how they look. Now, for the last number of years, our banknotes have featured historical figures, and you're going to see some of those during this podcast. People like Winston Churchill, Jane Austen, for example, and of course the King on the other side. The Bank of England is now saying it wants to replace all of them with scenes of nature, partly for security reasons. Apparently, it's harder to copy nature than it is to copy a historical figure. So it's to stop people forging or creating illegal banknotes. Well, that's all very good, but why does the king get to stay then? Because they could create him as well. We don't know. Anyway, the Bank of England has made this decision that on the back there's going to be nature. Now, just before we go any further, I have to explain something. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. So bear with me, right? So, in the whole of the UK, the notes that the Bank of England issue are our official currency. It's the pound. Yeah. But locally, some of the banks in Scotland and Northern Ireland produce their own banknotes. It's all been agreed, they're all legal, but some shops in England prefer not to use them. Think of it this way. This is how it was explained to me. If you go to a shop and the shop says you can only pay in Pokemon cards, the shop has a perfect right to do that. So in Scotland and Northern Ireland, the banks produce their own currency for use. Now, if you go to England with that currency, you're going to have a problem, okay? Because a lot of shops don't recognize the notes. Northern Ireland's worse because it's smaller. So when you see a Northern Irish banknote, you wouldn't recognize it. Even I don't see them very often. I've only seen one in my life, I think. And the first time I saw it, I thought, is this really legal? It doesn't look like it. But my point is this: banknotes are changing for the national official currency, but it doesn't affect others. Now, there's been a big backlash about this because many people don't want Winston Churchill removed. He is very popular amongst English people. So there's some English people who are very upset about this. But the rest of us, do we care? Well, I haven't seen an English banknote in ages. I usually pay by card. And in Scotland, people see their own banknotes issued with the local banks. But today, I'm going to introduce you to some of these banknotes so you can see them. Let's watch a little video.
The Bank of England banknotes. There are two versions of the banknotes in circulation. One version featuring a portrait of King Charles III, and one version featuring a portrait of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. There are four denominations of the banknotes in circulation: £5, £10, £20 and £50. All four denominations of notes are printed on polymer.
Right, you can see here, this is the Bank of England's official guidance about Scottish and Northern Ireland banknotes. Very confusing, but let's read through this, okay? It says, only the Bank of England issues banknotes in England and Wales, but those are legal and because of the amount that they produce are everywhere. Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, they're everywhere, okay? And they're perfectly legal, and that's what we see most of. But 6 banks in Scotland and Northern Ireland can also issue banknotes. And then it says coins are made, manufactured, and issued by the Royal Mint. That's the government department that looks after coins. And they're usually always the same across the UK. 3 banks are authorised to issue banknotes in Scotland: the Bank of Scotland, Clydesdale Bank, and the Royal Bank of Scotland. 3 banks are authorised to issue banknotes in Northern Ireland: Bank of Ireland, Northern Bank, and the National Westminster Bank. Now, this gets a little bit confusing, especially when you see them. It also goes on to talk about another one there, and then it's talking about coins. Okay, so there's some legal bits there, but how we regulate Scottish and Northern Ireland banknotes, so that's a separate issue. We're not going to go into that, but I do want to show you some pictures of what the Scottish and Northern Ireland banknotes look like. You've just seen the video, and on the other side of those notes, you have Winston Churchill, you have Jane Austen, but Scottish ones, we have different people. Now, is this going to change? For Scotland and Northern Ireland, the answer is almost certainly no. So what we're seeing here is a story about the Bank of England and the Bank of England's notes, which are all across the UK, but the Scottish ones and Northern Irish ones won't change. Are you confused yet? It is difficult. Let's have a look and see. This is an old news report from when the last time the Bank of England decided to change its banknotes, which was in 2020. The Bank of England usually changes its banknotes every 6 or 7 years, I think. So it says here, banknotes. Why do Scotland and Northern Ireland have their own money? And we're looking at this because I want you to understand that even though our official Bank of England currency is changing, the Scottish and Northern Ireland notes might change, but not necessarily to match the English ones. Usually they have different figures. All 3 banks in Scotland have now brought out their new £20 notes, following the launch of the Bank of England note on the 20th of February. So in other words, if the Bank of England is about to issue notes with wildlife on them, then probably the Scottish banks and Northern Irish banks would do the same. Let's have a look at what they actually look like. There we are. There's a Scottish £20 note. I don't know who she is on the front. Kate, I can't make out the surname there of what it says. Is that Cranston, is it? Never heard of her. Anyway, she's worth £20. Let's see. Oh yeah, this one I've seen. I know who he is. He's Sir Walter Scott. So he pops up in my wallet sometimes. And yeah, there's the Clydesdale Bank, £20. Yeah, and all 3 Scottish banks print £100 notes too, which the Bank of England doesn't. They only do 50s as their highest. So there's the Ulster Bank, that's Northern Ireland. Another one. Who's she? You see, even I haven't seen this before. Look, at Belfast. If this landed in my wallet, I would be asking questions because I've never seen this before. Why doesn't Wales have its own money? Only the Bank of England issues banknotes in Wales, so the nation doesn't have any set of notes like Scotland or Northern Ireland. Are notes from Scotland and Northern Ireland legal currency? The notes printed by the banks in Scotland and Northern Ireland are legal currency and can be used anywhere in the UK, but it's not against the law for a shop to refuse to accept the notes. They might not be used to seeing the notes, and if they don't recognize them, they may choose not to take them. And by the way, shops in England aren't allowed to give you Scottish or Northern Ireland notes, but they will accept them from you, although you might have to persuade them a little bit. Now, let's just take a look at what's on our banknotes at the moment, because in 2020, they updated them. So this is what we have at the moment. Let's just have a look.
The £20 note is the most used banknote in the country, but they're changing from these to these. You can't get hold of these yet because they launched on the 20th, but I managed to get one early. Well, with a security guard. On the back of the new notes is famous British artist J.M.W. Turner. It's the first note to have two colour foils, gold and blue. It's also the first note to have two windows. And here in the top corner, there are 3 sets of raised dots to help you if you're blind or visually impaired. It's so nice and shiny and crisp. Do you think they'll let me keep it?
I think that removing Churchill from banknotes is erasing our history.
If you're looking for a metaphor for the decline of Western civilization, you could do worse than the news that Winston Churchill, who's often likened to a bulldog or a lion, may soon be replaced in Britain's public esteem by an actual squirrel. Bank of England has announced that the next set of banknotes it produces won't feature images of great figures from Britain's political, scientific, and literary past. Instead of Jane Austen, J.M.W. Turner, Alan Turing, and Churchill, who now grace the reverse of the side featuring the monarch, there will in future be a menagerie of as yet unidentified British wildlife.
Well, apparently these new banknotes, when they do come in a few years' time, will have enhanced measures to prevent counterfeits.
Really?
They genuinely believe, it seems the experts in the city, genuinely believe that a drawing of an otter is harder to fake than a drawing of Winston Churchill.
Well, in that case...
Okay, here's the summary, if you're not completely confused already. The Bank of England produces banknotes for the whole of the UK, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales. However, Scotland and Northern Ireland also produce their own banknotes to be used only locally. Does that make sense? Now, the Bank of England, in its wisdom, has decided it's going to take away the famous characters from the banknotes, like Winston Churchill, and is going to give us squirrels, wildlife, fields instead. We don't know yet about any changes to the Scottish and Northern Ireland notes, but generally they usually change at the same kind of times, but it's unlikely they'll be changing to match the Bank of England. For political reasons, they don't want to be associated, of course, with England anymore. And secondly, just because they might prefer historical figures. So here's the lowdown then. The Bank of England is changing its notes. Because of the number they produce, it's legal tender all across the UK. You're going to see them. But if you go to Scotland and Northern Ireland, you might not. And they aren't coming in for a few years yet. Anyway, so Winston Churchill disappears. Beavers, squirrels, dogs, and cats, and maybe fields come in. And as for Scotland and Northern Ireland, we don't know exactly how their notes are going to change. But one thing is for sure, they won't be matching England. I'm pretty sure about that. All right. See you. Bye.